So welcome back, as promised, and we heard there a fascinating debate with Edie and the rest of her panellists. And I want to change the tone, I want to change the speed a little bit, because we've heard so much about growth and re-emergence and life after the pandemic. I wonder if actually now we slow down and think about doing things maybe a little differently, because we often hear the word sustainability, don't we? And that's often associated with limiting ourselves, restraint. It's about reducing consumption. It's about ensuring our survival. But does it always have to be that way? Does sustainability necessarily need to have a negative overtone about depriving ourselves of something? Could it be liberating rather than being restrictive? Well, to answer that, I'm really pleased to welcome the renowned mystic, yogi and spiritual leader Sadhguru, who is the founder of the Isha Foundation. Sadhguru, I'm delighted that you're back with us in India Global Forum. Really nice to see you. I listened intently to your session last year at this event. I found it absolutely fascinating, so I'm delighted to have you back. So let me start though with that question that I posed in that introduction there, talking about sustainability. Does sustainability need to be something that is seen as restrictive or limiting?
So today in the world, everybody is talking about sustainability. Essentially, when we say everybody, it is just probably 1 or 2% of the population who is talking about containing human aspiration. Well, you cannot contain human aspiration. Do what you want. People will find different ways to do it. But we can definitely reorient human beings as to what is growth, as to what is well-being, as to what is being really on top of the world. This is something that we can reorient. Unfortunately, in the last 50 to 70 years' time, our idea of growth has become just heaps of accumulation. Most homes have turned into warehouses, simply because whether you need it or you don't need it, you have to shop, and our whole economy depends on more and more, when actually there is no more than what is there on the planet. So there are many challenges in this direction. One important thing is, the most important thing is for us to understand and experience that this very body is just an outcrop of this planet. If we are conscious of this, nobody has to tell us about sustainability. Our life is wonderful, not because of the fluctuations in the stock market. Our life is wonderful because we eat nutritious food, we drink clean water, and we breathe pure air. This is why our life is wonderful. So this understanding is simply missing from the school, from the time the child goes to school, because the entire education process is about conquest, how to get on top of everything and everybody. So this orientation if we change, we naturally will take care of our activity in a more sustainable manner. When we talk about sustainability, everybody is right now focused on industry, business. So all businesses and industry are wary of anything ecological. If you speak, they are wary. They know it's going to… the ball is going to come to their court. But we need to understand, we are misunderstanding lot of civic situations as ecological situations. For example, if there are plastic bags floating around in the streets of London, it is not an ecological issue, it is a civic issue. If the air in Delhi is not clean enough for people to breathe, it is not an environmental issue, it is a civic issue. If there is not enough water for people in the city of Chennai, it is not an ecological issue, it's a civic issue. We are misunderstanding civic issues for ecological issues, and all kinds of machineries are on it. Well, these are important to handle, but it is not necessary to address them as ecological issues. The biggest disaster and the biggest damage on the planet is caused by agriculture. Nobody wants to say this because with industry it's easy to hit them, with business it's easy to hit them. For example, in India, 84% of the land is occupied by agriculture and only 1.3% of the land is occupied by the industry. We would like industry to occupy a little more land because it's important industry grows and agriculture should step back. How will agriculture step back? The only way you can do this is by making it more organic and more efficient, that less land will produce more food. Anyway, one important aspect of agriculture is, out of 51 million square kilometers of land that agriculture is right now using on this planet, 40 million square kilometers of land is used for raising animals and their food. If if the world reduces their meat consumption by 50%, they don't have to give it up. 50% if they reduce, all doctors are telling you to reduce. So if you reduce it by 50% in the interest of your health, not in the interest of the planetary health, but that will be natural consequence that 20 million square kilometers of land will be available for regeneration. Because right now the most serious challenge is soil degradation. See, there is water problems, there is air problems, there is air pollution, there is water pollution. These things can be fixed in a matter of couple of years if we come up with the right policy and stringent enforcement. But the soil degradation that you cause now, if you continue business as usual for another 2 decades, to turn it around will take 150 to 200 years. So soil degradation is the real issue on the planet, but nobody is addressing that because you don't find one person to hit or one somebody to attack. You need an enemy. There is no enemy because all of us are involved in this. So the only way we can really turn the planet around and make it sustainable is to keep soil healthy, because our very body, the very body that we carry is soil. If there is no richness in soil, there will be no richness in life. If we do not understand this and do not do something significant in the next 2 decades, well, there will be a big price to pay. But this need not be against economic well-being. This need not mean restrictions. Right now, we are manifesting this with 5.2 million farmers in the Kaveri, Kaveri basin in southern India, that actually by regenerating soil, by rejuvenating the soil to a richer place, the income of the farmer in 5 to 7 years goes up by 300 to 800%. 3 to 8 times over in 5 to 7 years. We have demonstrated this in the last 20 years of this project, but now it is taking on a new scale. This needs to happen across the world. This needs to happen particularly in the tropical world, because the impact of tropical soil on the planet is very big. In southern India, if you take a handful of soil, it has over 10,000 species. We must understand, in one handful of soil, we have more microorganisms than the entire human population on the planet. This is how alive and rich it is. If you don't keep it that way, we are doing a great disservice to the next generation.
Sadhguru, this is…
have nothing to live by.
This is why I was so excited about being able to speak to you today, because we've covered about 100 different topics in one answer, and that is wonderful. I want to pick you up on a few of the issues that you raised there, because look, what we've heard all day as part of this India Global Forum is about, how we grow out of this, how we get economies back on track, how we start to see economic growth again. What you're telling me there is about reframing that debate. And crucially, your latter point was about looking longer term, ignoring those short-term goals and thinking about things in the longer term, which probably means some maybe painful decisions in the shorter term. I noticed in one of your articles you talk about greed is good, and I want to quote this because you said you should become greedy in a limitless way. That actually goes against some of the things you've just explained to me there, so please explain that. How can you be greedy in a limitless way?
See, what is greed is… the definition of greed is like this. What I want is my need. What you want is greed. This is the definition of greed, in my understanding. Because everybody thinks somebody else is greedy, nobody thinks I'm greedy, all right? So essentially, this is human nature. There is a desiring process in every human being. You desire for something today, and if it happens by today evening, tomorrow morning you will come up with a new desire. If that happens by evening, again the next day you will come up with a new desire. If you really look at this process, human being is a constant desiring process. So essentially, they are going to… desire is a tool to expand, and how far they want to expand if you look at it. They want to expand as large as the cosmos. If you give them a whole solar system, they will say, we want the galaxy. If you give them one galaxy, they'll say, we want the next galaxy. So essentially, human desire is a limitless process. The question is only how constipated an expression it finds. Will you allow it to expand instantaneously right now, or will you take a lifetime expanding it? If you take a lifetime expanding it, you will damage the world, you will damage everybody's life, you will be in conflict with every other life. But right now, instead of being a physical entity, being totally identified with your physical body, which is a structure of a certain boundaries, because physical can only happen with defined boundaries, you're trying to expand the boundaries. But if you become conscious, if you approach your desiring process consciously, you can desire for everything. When I say desire for everything, see what spirituality means is, everybody is asking or desiring for a piece of this creation. When you become spiritual, you start desiring for the very source of creation. Isn't this greed? This is super greed. Spiritual process means super greed, not small greed. Now, if you are super greedy, you wouldn't want only your well-being. See, there is no human being who is not interested in human well-being. Everybody is interested in human well-being. It is only a question of scale. In one person, human well-being means his individual well-being. In another person, it's him and his family. In another person, him and his community. In another person, him and his nation. In another person, him and the entire world. So, everybody is interested in human well-being, it's a question of scale. I said, anyway, you can't help desiring, at least desire big, not just your well-being, the well-being of every life on this planet.
You talk about the consumption that we seem to be obsessed with and that limitless consumption. You might call it materialism. How do we get beyond that? How do we stop being materialistic? Because that, it sounds to me from what you've described, is the source of so many problems, be them environmental or social.
The human desire is not for endless consumption. Human desire is for endless expansion. It all depends how you define this expansion. You can expand by going on endless shopping, or you can find expression for your longing to expand with love, with inclusion, or with simply what we are referring to as consciousness. What essentially consciousness means, that dimension of you which is not physical in nature. Physicality has a boundary. The only way you can expand it is by extending boundaries. What we refer to as consciousness is not physical, so it is not a boundary-based aspect of life. Once it is not boundary-based, you are naturally inclusive. When I say inclusive, it is not an ideology, it is not a philosophy that you adhere to, it is not something that you think through. It is the very nature of the existence that if you go deep enough into yourself and touch a dimension which is beyond physicality. Well, this may sound too esoterical for a lot of people who are in a business conference, so let me explain. Everything that's physical about you is something that you have accumulated. This body is actually a piece of the planet that we have gathered. Most people don't get this till you bury them. But it is actually a piece of the planet that we are carrying around. So we have gathered this. What you gather can be yours, but it cannot be you. Anything that you gather can be yours, but it can never ever be you. So if you understand it's something that you have gathered, it's not you, experientially if you are aware that this is a gathering, this is an accumulation, this is not me, if you have that, then accumulations will not be compulsive. Expansion will still be compulsive. Human being wants to expand. It has to be there because otherwise you are no more a human being. The difference between animal nature and human nature is they are just trying to fulfill their survival requirements. But a human being is never going to settle with survival process because a human being naturally wants to expand. That is the meaning of our evolution, that we have come to a place that we cannot be contained just by our survival. Survival is just a fundamental that we need. Once survival is taken care of, we want to expand limitlessly. Expanding limitlessly, if we do it physically, if you and me try to expand physically, obviously we will reach somewhere where there will be a conflict between you and me. But if we expand consciously, there will be no conflict, and this is not an ideology, this is the nature of the existence. There is a dimension of non-physicality within us, which we are referring to as consciousness in English language, and this dimension is not limited to anything. So when it comes to you and me, that is your body, this is my body, this is my mind, that is your mind, these things will never become one. But there is no such thing as your life and my life. This is a living cosmos. You captured some, I captured some. So if we come to that point where we experience the life that we are, beyond the physiological and psychological drama that people are engaged in right now, if you experience the process of life that you are, the fundamental of life that you are, then expansion will be of a different nature. You will not give up expansion and you should never give up expansion. But does it have to happen by shopping for more, or can it happen simply by experience? This is a choice that humanity has. This is what conscious human beings mean, this is what conscious planet means, that we want to make this humanity conscious because expansion is inevitable and it's a must. But physical expansion is just conflict. Whether we are the conflict is, we consider something a conflict only if two human beings or two groups of human beings get into conflict. But we are in constant conflict with everything. We want to build a house, we are committing a genocide on insects and microbes and various other things, which is the basis of our life. There are 10 times more microbes in our body than the number of human cells we have. When this is the case, we are in conflict with our very existence. So if this has to go, our identity, our experience of life has to transcend beyond the limitations of physicality. This is what spiritual process means. Unfortunately, it has been projected in the world, spiritual process means looking up or looking down or looking somewhere. No, spiritual process means turning inward, understanding that human experience is determined only within us. Human experience is generated only within us. Whether it is pain or pleasure, joy or misery, agony or ecstasy, whatever, it all is generated within us. So if we want to change human experience, which is very important, because all this damage to the planet is happening not by intent, but in pursuit of human happiness. If we understand our joy and our happiness can only come from within, in is the only way out. If we understand this much, we will stop being in pursuit of happiness. Once our life becomes an expression of our joy, rather than being in pursuit of happiness, then nobody has to talk to us about sustainability. We will do what is needed and nothing more.
I said in the introduction, Sadhguru, that this year has been so difficult for so many, but if there's anything that we take away from it, perhaps that we think about doing things a little bit differently, about what is
Ben,
important.
can you just repeat that question? The volume was very low, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Just to say, at the start of this pandemic, of course, so much happened over the past 12 or 18 months that many of us have learned now a lot about ourselves. We've learned a lot about what is important and what we would like to do differently. I know you've taken a road trip across the United States, haven't you? And you've met a lot of people. I wonder what you learned on that road trip, and what are the lessons that people that you met said they will take away from this pandemic and think about doing things in future a little differently?
See, wherever I meet people, I'm trying to impress upon them. Everybody is talking about, Sadhguru, when will it be normal once again? I keep telling them, see, you were not normal before the pandemic, you were quite abnormal. As human beings, we've been living an abnormal life. Now with pandemic, at least you're beginning to think about it, at least think in such a way that we will be normal. Normal means just this. See, there is a beautiful, parable in India. It is a a Panchatantra parable, where a man is sitting at the wrong end of the branch and hacking with an axe at the branch. The day he succeeds, he will fall. This is how we've structured our life on this planet. If we succeed, we will fail. Now, this is a wrong way to structure our lives. We have structured our life like this because at one time, like there was a time, probably 100 years ago, where a certain number of people decided that the resources of the world can all be pooled for their well-being. That time is over. Now every country, every society is seeing how they can live well also. And now the standard has become, usually in most parts of the world, unfortunately the standard has become the American way of life. Probably it's the influence of Hollywood and other agencies
And
which
how would you
spread this.
characterize that way
But
of life? What is that way of life?
that way of life is like this. Right now, the living earth statistics say if the 7.6 billion people on the planet should have what an average American citizen has, we need 4.5 planets. But we only have half a planet, half has been eaten up, all right? So with 4.5 planets, you are not going to get anywhere. So all that is going to happen is, if we do not consciously correct our course right now, nature will do it to us in very cruel ways. Right now, I think yesterday or day before, the pandemic deaths has crossed 4 million, that's what they're telling me. I think it could be much more than that, but anyway, at least 4 million people, according to the statistics, have passed. So 4 million people is a lot of people to die in 1.5 years' time. Apart from natural causes of death, extra 4 million. So this is a good warning for all of us that if we… I've been saying this for the last 30 years, if we do not make conscious corrections, nature will do it very cruelly for us. One important aspect which nobody wants to address, and I am super unpopular for addressing this issue all the time, is our population. In the beginning of 20th century, we were 1.6 billion people. Now we are inching towards 8 billion. The United Nations, WHO and others are predicting by 2050 will be 10.25 billion people. Well, this is a recipe for disaster. People keep asking me wherever I go in these travels, Sadhguru, what will happen after this? In the next 25 years, what will happen? In the next 50 years, what will happen? I say, why are you looking for predictions? You have come as a human being. This means, what this fundamentally means is, for every other creature, nature has fixed 90% of their life. 10% latitude, they may be there may be there for individual characteristics to find expression. With a human being, only 10% is fixed, 90% is left in our hands. This means we have the necessary intelligence to plan and create our lives. That's why 90% is left in our hands. Otherwise, nature would have fixed everything for us. So, instead of a plan, you're asking for a prediction. Prediction is for creatures who cannot plan. A human being or a human society should plan how we will be in the next 25 years, how we will be in the next 50 years, how our future generations will be in the next 100 years. We must plan their well-being now.
But Sadhguru, are
See, in
we
India, for example…
Sorry to interrupt, but we're notoriously bad at planning. You might say that planning has got us into the situation we're in now, whereby, if we don't correct our path, we face extinction, either environmentally or socially or through overpopulation. There simply won't be enough food or water to keep us all fed and watered. I mean, that is the problem, that we can't plan well.
We will not face extinction, we will face very cruel natural conditions where a lot of people will succumb to this in so many ways. So, right now, we are bad at planning. No, it's not… that is not the problem. The problem is, we are not conscious enough. We are still in unconscious, instinctive reaction to everything that happens around us. When I say we are not conscious enough, it is just this. It doesn't take some genius to understand that as we sit here, the very body that we carry is the soil that we walk on. It doesn't take any genius. But we don't want to know this because We've been brought up in a box. We can call this a home. Within the four walls, people have grown up, never being in touch with any other life around us. Like you told me, I was traveling this last nearly 50 days, largely alone by myself. And when you live outdoors, you have a different sense of life. Today, most people who live in cities have grown up without even stepping on bare soil, all right? They're just in a box, completely uninvolved with life around them. They think food comes from a supermarket. They think milk comes from supermarket, vegetables come from supermarket. They don't know that there is nature, there is life, there is other life. Above all, there are also certain philosophical and scriptural blemishes which have caused this. One thing is, people have been told, a large percentage of people have been told, all other life here is here to serve human life. No, no. If you go and tell a donkey that you are here to serve me, he will kick you in the face, believe me. You can't even tell an ant, you are here to serve me. None of them are here to serve us. They have a life of their own, a full-fledged life of their own. But in the way they live, they serve us. Similarly, we have to bring this in the way we live, we must serve every other life. We should not have another separate service department. The way we live should be service to every other life. This has to come into us, this is how we have lived. For example, India as a culture has always had this. First thing is to treat every aspect of life as an ingredient of life. The water that we drink, the food that we eat, the soil that we walk upon. Before a farmer steps into his land, every day he bows down to his soil because he sees soil as God, because without that he knows that there will be no food for him and his family. So, this is important. Right now, all the ingredients of life, we are beginning to treat them as commodities that we can buy and sell. This has to go, we have to bring more involvement. From the time the child enters kindergarten, or they should not enter kindergarten, if you ask me, at 4 years of age, why are you locking them up and teaching them nonsense that they will not use in their life? It is important that they need to grow up being exposed to nature and being involved with every other life on the planet. There must be some sense of involvement. Without this involvement, we are behaving like we came from elsewhere. We have grown out of this planet. This whole idea that this whole idea of looking up to everything, all solutions are up there in heaven, this must go. We must understand all solutions for human experiences within us. All solutions for the life around us is in this planet, nowhere else. We need to look at it this way. Only then there will be genuine sustainability.
You may disagree with me on this, and that's absolutely fine, because the picture you paint there of, children at a very young age being sort of entered into the system that is run by business, it's run by, success. Success is measured in exam results and commercial achievements and, professional achievements. It takes a brave person to step away from that and say, you know what, that's not what I want to be involved in. That is not how I will qualify my life. How do you do that when we are surrounded, and I'm not blaming just business here, but business that quantifies resources as commodities, as you've described, or us, and we value our success in terms of how much we earn and what we can buy and what assets we can acquire. How do you step away from that?
See, you must understand this, it's not today. Even if you look back a century or 2 centuries ago, we have not only sold water and air and food to each other. It's inevitable, transactions need to happen in the society. You have one thing, I have another thing. From a simple barter system to a complex market system, I have nothing against that. But we have even sold human beings in the marketplace, in the open market. We have sold human beings as we sell sacks of grain. We have done that in the past and we are still doing it. People are telling me they're selling over 1.4 million children below 15 years of age on the online. This is incredible, using technology to sell our children. So we need to understand this. Once we come to accept these things as normal, that we can sell our children for some dirty business, that means we've hit the bottom of what a human being can be. So it's time we extricate ourselves from that. So in many ways, the schools and the education systems are only designed to make human beings into cogs in the economic machine that we have created. We don't want it to fail even if it is causing a disaster on this planet. This is not about dismantling the economic structure. We can do very well by doing things in a sustainable way. When I say sustainable way, I am not talking about crimping the marketplace, I am not talking about crimping the industry, but as human beings, maybe if without policy, without instruction, most people will not be conscious enough to change. For example, in India, in a country like India, at the level of economic status that it is in, 40% of the people discard their smartphone within 1 year of usage. I think we need to make a law that if you buy a smartphone, at least minimum 3 years you must use it, and if your smartphone breaks down or any damn phone breaks down, you must surrender your phone to the manufacturer before you buy the new phone.
Yeah.
Now, in each house, we don't know how many phones are sitting unused. There are about 500 million phones which are not used and they have not come for recycling. They are somewhere in India. This is in India. I can imagine what should be the situation in United States and the western part of the world. It must be much higher. So if you buy a car, you must at least use it for 5 years or 100,000 kilometers, whichever is sooner. Something like this. We are going on expanding manufacturing. Expanding to where? You have only one planet.
But the reason
One
it is
important
like that,
thing.
you may say, Sadhguru, is because business wants us to buy more and consume more and spend more, and that's why they make the models as they do. They constantly upgrade so that they get more money from us.
So we need to understand, business was created for human well-being. Human beings were not created for the well-being of the business. Let's understand this. Commerce is here to serve us, serve humanity, not the other way around. Right now, whether it is a production of cars or phones or human beings, all this needs to be curtailed if we want to live sensibly on this planet. The day that they're predicting is going to be over 10 billion people on this planet by 2050. Well, I don't know if I want to be here with 10 billion people. I don't wish to be here on this planet with 10 billion people because I know nobody can live well on this planet with that many people. It is important, whether it's a human reproduction or car production or phone production or anything, needs to be brought to some sensible gauge. Maybe at one time in the last century we believed this planet is a limitless resource. At least now we clearly understand that this is not a limitless resource, this is a limited resource. Once we understand this, a certain amount of planning is very important. If we do not plan, and if you wait for astrologers and soothsayers to give you a prediction, then that means we are a disastrous human beings. We cannot avoid the disaster in this generation if we do not plan now.
And how do you unite those conflicting interests, therefore, of business on one hand that says it relies on its fortunes on ever-increasing consumption, getting us to part with our cash and pay more and buy more, and yet that model that I think we would all probably agree with, that picture you paint of us thinking, you know what, I don't need the latest this, I don't need to consume this, I don't need to surround myself with all of these materialistic things. How do you unite that? Because we know that the success of our economies and the structure that we live in is based on the success of that system.
See, a few years ago when I was at the Economic Forum, I saw that some people were very rankled by my presence because their question is, what is a mystic doing in the Economic Forum? So one of them came up to me and saying, what are you doing here? I said, what do you do? He said they manufacture computers, it's one of the large computer manufacturing units. See, I said, whether you manufacture a safety pin or a computer, you need to understand all these things started in pursuit of human well-being. Human well-being is a basic business. Safety pin, computer, spacecraft are just different expressions. I said, human well-being is my business all the time and it should be everybody's business. It has to be everybody's business and it is everybody's business. Only thing is the scale of approach. Are you thinking of just yourself, or your family, or your nation, or the world? This is all there is. A time has come where technologies and our communications have brought us to a place we cannot think anymore in individualistic way. Individualistic, when I say, it's not just me. If my individuality congregates, it becomes a nation. And this congregation of individual nature has been disastrous. Our individuality is just a psychological reality. We are not a concrete block kind of individuals. We have to breathe. Breathing means we are breaching our individual nature every moment, otherwise we cannot exist. And it's not only in respiration, in every other way it's being breached. So individuality is a psychological reality, and this is the magnanimity of creation, that for a speck of a life that we are in this universe, we are given an individual experience. We can sit here and even wonder about the nature of the universe. This is not a small privilege. Do not misuse and misunderstand this privilege. Right now, that is all this is, me versus the rest of the world. This is our economic module. No, this has to change. If we don't change, as I said, if we do not change this consciously, you watch it, you are a young man, you will live longer than me, you will see it, that in the next 50 years, nature will make these corrections in a very, very cruel way. I wish we have the sense, I hope we have the sense to make conscious corrections. As a part of this, right now, we are striving to move the world towards this by raising human consciousness, and above all, by creating a movement called Conscious Planet, through which we want to make ecological issues election issues. There is no other way in a democratic country to make real change. We want to see at least the number 2 item on every political party's manifesto. Number 1 will be anyway economy. Number 2 item must always be ecology. Every political party has to come to this. For this, we must move at least 3 billion people. Why I'm saying 3 billion people is, 5.26 billion people have franchise on this world. That means they have the power to choose their governments. Out of this 5.26 billion people, at least 3 billion people become conscious. What are the simple things that should not happen in their country? And what are the things that must happen in their country in terms of soil, in terms of water, in terms of air, in terms of general ecological condition in their country? If they become aware, only then democratically elected governments will invest their government machinery and resources in this, because right now, all democratic governments are limited in term, either 4 or 5 or 6 years at the maximum. So most of them are only looking at how they can do something within their term. This is an aspect of life. If you invest today, it will reap benefits in 15 to 20 years' time. Nobody wants to do it because most political leaders come to power when they're over 60 years of age, generally, at least till now. Things are changing a little bit, and nobody wants to invest in something that will bear fruit after 20 years. Unless people, 60% of the electorate clearly makes a statement, this is what we are trying to do through this Conscious Planet movement, to get them to say this and not to misunderstand civic issues as ecological issues. This is very important.
I'm aware that our time is tight, Sadhguru, so I want to ask you a final question, and you'll have to forgive me because I know you probably can't boil this down to a few bullet points for us, but I was looking at your latest book. It's called Karma, isn't it? A Yogi's Guide to Crafting Your Destiny. What are those tips? How do we craft our destiny, and how do we do those things that you say we need to do right now if we're able to avert a crisis that is coming down the line?
See, this one simple understanding, if we can spread to the entire world. Last 30 years, this effort is on. Today, we are touching a little over 2 billion people, that's what they're telling me on the social media. The number looks nice, 2 billion is a big number, but the population is 7.6 billion. So we need to enhance that. The simple thing is this, if everybody understands, human experience happens from within, not from outside conditions. You can live in a palace and still be miserable. You can live on the street and still be exuberantly joyful, because human experience happens from within us. What happens from within us must happen the way we want. Right now, we are operating like this is the habit of being, in the evolutionary process of being other creatures, that still we are in compulsive, instinctive reactions to life. We have to move from compulsive reactions to conscious response in our life. That means if we determine what's happening within us, our pursuit of happiness will come to an end. Our life will become an expression of joy. When you're joyful, when I'm asking you as a person and everybody around you, when you are joyful, have you seen how flexible and wonderful human being you are? And when you're not joyful, do you see how rigid and can be a nasty human being all of us can be? So this is most important. The biggest mistake we have made in this world is we have been trying to create good people. People who believe they are good, they are the people who cause maximum damage on this planet with the best of intentions. It's important we create joyful and sensible human beings, because it is always people who believe they are good, who obliterate cultures, who cause genocides, who really cause maximum damage on this planet. So it's important when you're joyful and sensible. When you're joyful, you're naturally sensible. That is a time it's easy to talk to a human being, to transform a human being, to limit his consumption. Just a simple thing I'm telling you. Let us say if all of us had a simple practice, 20 minutes a day, all of us closed our eyes, not at once, at different times. In 24 hours, 7.6 billion people close their eyes for 20 minutes. Do you know how much consumption will come down on the planet? I don't have figures for that, but believe me, it's going to be substantial.
It is the most wonderful way to end, Sadhguru. I'm so grateful for your time. It's been fascinating to hear your journey and those thoughts. And I really hope that so much of it we can take away, especially after a day of business and consumerism and capitalism and regrowth and making money out of this crisis. It's really lovely to hear that different perspective. I'm so grateful. Thank you. Lovely to see you.
Namaskaram. Thank you very much.